Okay, well, it's so nice to meet you. My name is Ariba, and I am an expert editor, is the title for a Bachelor Nation fan site. So I've been doing it for a few years, and so when this opportunity came up, I was like, heck yes, I want to talk to Reality Steve. So I'm really excited to meet you and get to kind of talk to you about, I believe it's pronounced Bleav, right? Where you're going to be shifting your stuff onto.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about that, and also excited, as I'm sure you get asked all the time, your process and all of the things you're willing to share. So because we want to kind of talk about you joining Bleav, how did that come to be, and what is that going to look like?
Gosh, a friend put me in contact with one of the heads over there, friend from college, ran into
Okay.
him and they contacted me. We talked about it, and I think it was just really a good fit because they're more on the sports side. And while I also have a sports daily podcast, they're also wanting to build out their reality TV side. They want to get more because if you look at Bleav's network of programs, over 300 shows, most of them are sports related, which I was happy to join him because I want to build my sports podcast just as much because as
Sure,
much
yeah.
as I know about reality TV, I know way more about sports, but my reality TV audience does not translate over to my sports daily. I mean, it's just completely different, which is understandable. So I decided that this would be a good fit and I could help maybe build out their reality TV side of their podcasting. And we're just getting started. So we're in the early stages, but already it's going great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're right. I mean, there isn't always like a huge connection. I mean, I watch sports and I'm into reality TV, but that's not going to be the norm. So that's kind of cool that you get to try to help bridge that gap. That'll be
Yeah.
exciting. So you still have your stuff, but is this like a side thing, or is this a platform that you're taking all of your stuff and putting it on there? Or how is it going to work?
Yeah, I mean nothing really changes for the listener. That's the biggest thing is I didn't want any sort of major change for the listener. And the only thing that they might notice is maybe different ads, but they're all pretty much appearing at the same time in each episode. So that doesn't really change. They might hear more ads, I mean, time is money. We're not doing this for free. That's the
Sure.
way I make money is advertising on the podcast. So they might see the change a little bit, but for the most part, nothing. Now, I guess the one change overall in the podcast industry is the fact that within the last 2 months, I think it might have been January 1st. I don't even know the date that this started, but
Hmm.
normally if you subscribe to a podcast or you follow a podcast, once it's automatically downloaded into your stream every morning, that counts as a download. Well, now it's
Hmm.
different. Now you have to hit play. And I notify my listeners at the end of every podcast now, if you miss a day, that's fine. Just go back and hit play for me. I'd appreciate that. And that
Okay.
is definitely changed a little bit in the industry. Some of these numbers that you're hearing from podcasters are probably were a little bit inflated, and now it's almost getting down to the real thing because you might have someone that follows you, but if they don't listen, it doesn't really help your podcast. So that's what I
Yeah.
tell everybody. Just be sure to listen every day.
That sounds cool. That sounds like, and it's good for people to know kind of how the dynamics are changing, right? Because there's always things changing in all different platforms, but definitely from the podcast perspective, I think that's really interesting to know. So, well, best of luck with that. That sounds like an exciting move and a really cool opportunity to attract new or listenership rather, and really be able to sort of maybe help bring people who are into sports onto the other side. I know people have conflicting views. If they do one, it's like can't do the other. So it'll be cool to see how that kind of works out for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the fact that Believe has got a large network, and people can say like, "Oh, I've been around forever," and Reality Steve has been out there. How does anybody not, heard of him? If you watch The Bachelor, you know about the Bachelor
mhm,
franchise. But the bottom line is, there's probably a whole network of people out there that, by me going to Believe, are going to be hearing about me or even know that I have a podcast. They might know the name, but do they know I have a daily podcast? Do they know that
mhm.
I do 2 podcasts a day? 5 days a week, and on Thursdays I do three. I mean, I do 11 podcasts a week, and
Wow.
I don't know many people in the podcasting industry that do that. And maybe people are hearing me now for the first time. Maybe they've read my stuff, but they don't listen to podcasts because I still get it. I still get the old schoolers that are like, "I wish you would write more." And it's just, look, I think we know in 2024, podcasting is the way to go.
Hmm.
Long form writing is just not a thing anymore. It was when blogs started back in the early 2000s, and
Hmm.
I would write 5 or 6 page recaps on this show. Now it's just like I don't need to spend my time doing that when I know a lot of you aren't reading it and I see the
Yeah.
numbers. So it just makes business sense. It doesn't mean I'm getting rid of the column because I'll always have a recap to write. I just don't dive into it as much as I used to.
Yeah, and that makes sense because people are able to listen to the podcast while they're doing a million different things, but they're not going to be necessarily standing there with their phone in their face or whatever. And it's right. It has shifted towards that. People are reading less and wanting to just get that quick information, and that could be by listening. But that sounds exciting. So I want to know a little bit about how you got into this world of spoilers, and you've obviously made a name for yourself in this world, and it's very exciting, and it's really cool because you've been doing it for quite a while. So what brought you into this realm? Like, what was it that got you kickstarted? And I know you probably get asked that all the time, but I definitely want to know how that came to be.
Well, it happened by accident. I did not fall into this. Now, I used to write a recap about this show from
Okay.
2000 when it started, basically, to 2003 to 2009. And I just did it for fun. I was very snarky. I was very sophomoric in my writings,
Mhm.
not stuff that I'm proud of. That's why I basically deleted all of it. Um, Anything before 2016 is now gone.
Mhm.
But I had a following. I had a niche following of people that watched the show. Now, I knew when I was watching the show back between 2003 and 2009, I knew this show was taped in advance, but I never thought anything about spoilers. It just never came to my mind. They're like, hey, maybe I can get the information. Somebody that knew that I wrote a column about the show came to me one time during Jason Mesnick's season and said, hey, I know you write about the show. I've got some information about what happened post filming. I'm like, oh, really? So they told me, and it was, at that time, Jason's ending was like the biggest shocking ending the show had ever had, where he had
Mhm.
chose someone, gotten engaged, and then came back to the States, started dating, and realized he didn't want to be with her. And he wanted to be with the other girl that he dumped at the altar, which was Molly. And they had this private after the Final Rose taping. It wasn't in front of an audience. And I found out about all of it because this person told me. And then from that point forward, and then when I told people this, nobody had any reason to believe me. I'd never given a spoiler in my life, so it was almost
Mhm.
like, well, I'll be vindicated when this airs. And then it aired, and it was everything that I had said was going to happen. He dumped her at a private taping. He's now with Molly. And from that point forward, I just became this de facto authority on the show where people were just like, oh, that's the guy that knows the ending to the show, or he knows a lot about the show, and people just like to feed me info. That's pretty much how it happened. It's
Yeah.
a lot of crowdsourcing, a lot of people just telling me stuff because they know. And that was, my first one in 2009. I mean, here we are in 2024 and I'm still doing it. Obviously, the
Yeah.
name and the brand has gotten bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
People just feel like they want to share, they want to tell me stuff, and that's the way it's gone.
Yeah. And so is that how the process works? Like, I know that obviously there's people that, I've been following you for ever since I've been watching the show too, which was a few years ago. But how that process works? Like, people reach out to you, and then how do you vet or verify, or do you have like a vet verification process and kind of trusting the information you get?
Yeah, I wasn't as good as vetting in the past as I am now, just because I had gotten some things wrong for a few years, and I realized, oh, if I would have asked this question, I wouldn't have posted that spoiler.
Sure.
So I have a pretty thorough vetting process. It's just, sometimes I can get something from somebody and I automatically know it's right based on
Hmm.
who they are and what they told me. Sometimes I just get emails from people that I've never gotten an email from before, and they say, well, I know this. It's like, okay, how do you know this? Who are you? What is your relation to anything? How do I know you're telling me the truth? Like it's a pretty thorough process, and I can
Hmm.
usually tell by the way they answer me back how legit they are. I mean, sometimes people can't even put sentences together, and it's poorly spelled, and I'm just like, okay, I don't.
Hmm.
I'll keep it in the back of my mind because maybe they are right, but
Sure.
it's just a thorough process where I can just kind of tell now.
Hmm.
Now, the situation that happened, this particular season, the information that I got, it wasn't from somebody who was trying to fool me. It was
Hmm.
what they believed to be true. And even when I asked the questions about, okay, but how do you know this? It all in my mind, worked.
Yeah.
And it all made sense. And I was like, okay, this does make sense. And, people telling me who the winner was. I'm like, okay, it makes sense. And then I know that there's this thing that people will, maybe ABC planted it. And it's just like, no, they're not going out of their way.
Hmm.
Plus, anybody who says that, you don't know where I get my information from. So you can't say ABC planted it. I know the person who's talking to me does not
Sure.
work for ABC. I know who they are, they don't work for ABC. They have no connections to ABC. They're just giving me information that they believe to be true. And this season I thought it was. And it wasn't. So I had to change the spoiler, which I'm fine with. Although, yeah, I would have liked to have been right since everything else I gave this season was right. It's just the
Hmm.
only thing I had wrong was the ending, which obviously is the biggest thing that people want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of a double-edged sword. If I were to give somebody the spoiler to the season, just the ending, I guarantee I would hear, well, you knew nothing else about the season. What do you really know? And then this season, I had everything right up until the end. And it's like, oh, you didn't even know the ending. Like, what do we care? You knew who got eliminated in episode 3. Like, it's a very thankless job because I basically have to
Yeah.
get everything right or nobody cares, It's just,
Yeah.
all right, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, also, you're also operating from, you have the people who reach out to you, and then there's people, random people. But I mean, without giving it away on here, I also, when, you had shared who you thought originally was the winner, it was I had no, like as a viewer, I was like, yeah, that's definitely going to happen. Because it also felt like it was going in that direction earlier on, right?
Yeah,
So,
as I was watching the show, I don't, the show is tricky because they can do anything with editing, but it wasn't far fetched. I mean, it's not like I said the
not at
girl who
all.
finished fifth ended up winning. It's the girl ended up finishing second. I just had 1 and 2 mixed up. So,
Yeah,
and like I said, I always say this, if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. Like I'm only
sure.
as good as the people, I'm only as good as my sources because I don't see anything firsthand. I'm not there with binoculars
Yeah,
down in Mexico when Joey was filming his final rose ceremony. I don't know any of this stuff until I'm
yeah.
told it. So I'll never throw any source under the bus. Because it's still ultimately up to me to determine if
Sure.
this source has the right information. And I
Hmm.
believed they did, they believed they did, and it just happened to be wrong this season. I had gone I think it was 8 seasons in a row. So 4 years since I had released a wrong spoiler. It had been a while. I had gone
Yeah.
back to back seasons releasing a wrong spoiler and then changing it
Hmm.
mid-season. But yeah, it had been 8 seasons since I had gotten something wrong, and then this season I was able to change it with a month left. So
Yeah.
hopefully people can get on board with the new spoiler.
Yeah. And again, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't far-fetched. It felt like it could be going in that direction.
Yeah.
And again, it was one of two that were left. So you said 8 seasons, it's been 8 seasons. What was the season that you're referring to?
I can't remember whose came first, but I know I had Rachel Lindsay's season wrong.
Okay.
I had Rachel engaged to Peter Krause, and then
Okay.
about 5 episodes in, I said no, it's Brian, and
Mm,
then Hannah Brown. So Rachel was after Hannah Brown, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Hannah Brown, I originally had engaged to Tyler Cameron, and then about
mm,
halfway through the season, was able to realize no, she's with Jed. So
yeah.
those two, way back in the day, Allie. I
Mm.
had Caitlin wrong until she spoiled her own season. And then Desiree's season is the one I never was able to correct. It's the only season that I've all the way through had no idea who had won.
Yeah. Again, that's bound to happen. You would
It
think that
happens. Yeah.
things come up. Do you have like a story of like I guess, is there ever been like a spoiler that you've received where it was just so far-fetched that it didn't make sense? I'd just be interested because it must be interesting. You must get so many kinds of emails and messages. And has there been
Well,
something where you're just like, what is this?
yeah. Oh, tons. I can't even think of one in particular that's so weird off
Yeah.
the top of my head. But one thing that I get every season, no matter who I post as the winner,
Hmm.
is always, even on the seasons that I've been right, I've always been told that's not it. You're wrong. It's the other
Mm.
person. I'm just like, okay. And it ends up being right. This season, the funny thing was when Kelsey was when I announced the first spoiler, I never got any pushback.
Yeah.
Really weird because usually I do get pushback. It wasn't until like about beginning of February that were rumblings and people were saying you might want to look into this. You might want to look
Mm.
into that. And I did look into it. And it was like, okay, I could see it if this particular thing was a thing, but it's still nothing concrete. I need something concrete. If you're going to come to me and say, it's not this person, it's this person. I need something stronger than, well, I just know, or this is what I've heard through the grapevine. It's just like, okay,
Sure.
people here, I get heard through the grapevine every season. So I don't
Yeah.
put much stock into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it wasn't really anything that it was like someone that you would just be like, no, that's completely unbelievable. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. So what is, like making this into is this the full-time job? Like this is what you do day in, day out. This is your thing. So what does that feel like to have accidentally kind of stumbled into it and now it's a full-blown career where in this world you are very famous and popular, like it or not to whoever, but this is your thing, and anybody that watches knows who you are. So what has that been like to be like, oh my God, this is my career?
We'll put it this way. This is certainly not something that I ever thought would be my career. I
Sure.
always wanted to be in radio. I knew that. I wanted to be in sports talk radio. And then I got into sports talk radio right after college. And I realized, I don't know if I want to make a career out of this. It's too much politics involved and too
Mm-hmm.
much. And I was just like, eh. And then, but I didn't know where my career was going, to be honest with you. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing, like I said, went from 2003 to 2009. I had a blog where I wrote recaps about this show, but it was just for fun. I wasn't making any
Mm-hmm.
money. I know how to make money on the internet back in the early 2000s.
Sure.
And someone came to me and said one day, you should be making money based on your traffic. And I said, okay. So I handed that over to somebody to handle the advertising side of my podcast or my
Sure.
website. But I just, I never, I never thought this would be it. And then once I was about 2 years into advertising on the page, I realized, okay, I can make money off this.
Mm-hmm.
And I quit my career at the time. I was just working with my dad and doing some sales stuff. And I was just like, no, I got to incorporate myself. And I've been incorporated ever since 2011. This has been my full-time job since August of 2011. I can't believe
Wow.
this summer will be 13
13.
years. I've been doing this
Yeah.
as my full-time job. And then, from 2011 to 2016, it was just my website.
Mm-hmm.
Then when podcasting started to become a thing, I was like, this is what I want to do because
Sure.
radio was my background. I've never been a TV guy. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
like being on camera. I'm not very good at it, I don't think. So I never took TV classes in college. It was always
Mm-hmm.
radio related. And podcasting is basically like radio. You're a voice behind a microphone. And I've always
Yeah.
found interesting. I always found that the anonymity of a voice behind a microphone. People do know what I look like because I have done, lives and stuff like that in the past,
Sure.
but I'm not a TV guy. I don't want to be on TV. I like the radio aspect. So that's why I got into podcasting. And then podcasting basically became a second income starting in 2016 because I was like, oh, I can put some advertising on this, make some money on the side. And then we just did a complete switch because I could tell you probably in 2020 or 2021, maybe I'd say 80% of my income was my website and 20% of my income was, or maybe 75-25, website,
Mm-hmm.
75, podcasting, 25. Now, podcasting is 90% of my income and my website's 10%. People don't want to read anymore.
Yeah.
So it's how quickly it switched was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah.
But now I just embrace it, which is where it's just like, okay, if I'm making most of my money on podcasting, why am I bending over backwards? I still put out my columns. I'm just not going to put out 5 and 6 page recaps when,
Sure.
back when the show started, back when things became popular in regards to this show online, I know for a fact because I was in it. This show would air, back in the day. Sometimes it aired on Wednesday nights, but whatever,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say Monday nights, it aired on Monday nights. I would be the first person on the internet to have a column up, a recap, because there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram. People weren't giving their thoughts as the show was happening in live, where people could just read a stream of all these tweets and everything. I had my column up. I tried to have it up by like 8 a.m. the next morning, and I was the first one out every week.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me build my brand. Now, by the time my column comes up, you have probably heard a podcast. You've listened to a podcast because these people are getting screeners of the episode. So right when the episode airs, they can release their podcast because they've already pre-recorded it.
Yeah.
So that's why the column to me isn't as important because you've already heard 1,000 opinions about the show.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, you did it. So I've just kind of adjusted that way. But yeah, did I ever think that I'd be doing this? This would be my job to be a the Bachelor spoiler guy? No. I mean, because when I was in college and going to college, reality TV wasn't even a thing. The show wasn't even on the air. Like, that's how far back I go. But it wasn't a
Yeah.
thing. I couldn't have even predicted I want to be a blogger. There was no such thing as
Sure.
blogs when I was in
There was,
college.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just crazy how things have happened, but I enjoy it. I love the podcasting part of it. I love,
Sure.
I do 11 podcasts a week. Nobody, I don't, as far as I know, not many people in this industry do 11 a week. So
Yeah.
it's a lot, but I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, that is, I don't even, I can't even imagine what your schedule looks like day-to-day basis.
Well, the other thing is I'm such a late, I'm such a, if you're a night owl, does that mean you're up late? I always forget which one it
Yes,
is.
yes. If you're a
Okay.
night owl, you're more productive at night and you're just probably
Okay.
doing more things at night.
So I record two podcasts a day. My daily roundup, which is reality TV related, Bachelor related, my sports daily. I don't start recording those till like 10:30 at night. Because I want to get as much info as possible before,
Sure.
from that time I record until it hits your feed is about 6 hours. Usually nothing is breaking between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Sure, yeah.
So, but I try to do it as late as I can, just so
Yeah.
people have the latest info and keep it to 20 or 25 minutes. And, that's
Yeah.
that's the average commute, I think, in the United States. So
Yeah.
it works perfectly. But yeah, I don't start recording until after 10 o'clock at night. So by the time I record each one at 30 minutes and then label it and upload and all that stuff, it's about an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
I'm usually done by, depending on when I start, I'm usually done by midnight, 12:30, and then I'm usually in bed I don't go to bed till like 1.
Yeah.
Depends how much I want to scroll on TikTok before bed. Sometimes I'm stuck on TikTok till 2 and then I fall asleep. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's just a
just
free
definitely a night owl for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it kind of works out because the only breaking news that even potentially has ever kind of come out in the early morning is if somebody's on Good Morning America and they're like doing something there, but that's not happening all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I would imagine people wake up in the morning and they can be like, oh, there's a new episode, gonna listen, driving to school, driving to work or whatever. So I think that process probably works a lot in your favor
Yeah.
sometimes too.
Yeah. There's just not breaking between midnight and 6.
Yeah, there really isn't, unless it's something short of catastrophic. I don't think so either. So as we kind of wrap up, I would definitely want to get your thoughts just about how you feel like we're in Joey season right now. So kind of what have your thoughts been about the season overall and how it's progressed? And obviously we now know what we believe to be the proper ending. So just kind of what are your thoughts on Joey as the Bachelor and the season in total?
Can we talk about the spoiler?
Yeah, we'll split it up if you want. Yeah.
Okay. For the longest time, thinking that Daisy was the winner, I was like, this makes sense. And then when I found out it was Kelsey, I wasn't like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But to me, it turned into, well, this makes complete sense for Daisy to be the next Bachelorette. Like her story, she's got the most followers. She's got an underdog story, being deaf and hard of hearing. Like this is exactly what they would do to set up a next Bachelorette. She gets dumped at the end. She's just got a built-in storyline. And for those that don't know, there's been 20 seasons of The Bachelorette. 22 women have taken that role because we had 2 seasons where there were 2 Bachelorettes, Rachel and Gabby and Claire and Tayshia. Of those 22 Bachelorettes, 20 of them finished in the top 4 of their season. The only 2 that didn't were Katie Thurston and Hannah Brown. So we know it's pretty much going to be someone from Joey's top 4. Well, he's with Kelsey, so that leaves Daisy, Rachel, and Maria. And I'm sorry, but Rachel hasn't gotten any sort of edit this season that makes you think that she's going to be the Bachelorette. We just
agreed.
This is a Maria Daisy thing. And there's a lot of people online that would love to see Maria. And to me, and I say this every time, some people believe me, some people don't. I don't care who the Bachelorette is. All I care is that there is a Bachelorette season because that keeps me employed. It gives me something to talk about. So whether it's Maria or Daisy, it doesn't matter. But if people ask me my personal opinion on who I think they're going to pick, not who I want, because I don't care if they pick Maria or Daisy, because let's say they pick Maria or whoever they pick. It doesn't matter. My job and my goal remains the same. Find
Sure.
out the spoilers to their season. That's all I care about. So
Hmm.
I don't care who they pick. It doesn't mean I'm going to cover it any differently, whether it's Maria or Daisy. I just want to get the spoilers. But if you're asking me who do I think, it just seems to set up for a Daisy season based on
I agree.
everything that happens and how popular she's become. And America loves cheering for an underdog, and she's
Yeah.
absolutely an underdog. And I'm not saying that, and by saying that I think they are going to go with Daisy doesn't mean that if they chose Maria, I'm going to be bothered or I think that's a wrong choice. I'm just looking at it from a television production perspective, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what is Maria's story other than she was dumped by Joey? Everybody outside of Kelsey was dumped by
Yeah.
Joey this season.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything there. She brought up bullying like once, but
Yeah.
it's not been her thing this season of the girl that was always bullied. I
Hmm.
don't, that she did not, obviously there were things in the house with the women, but I don't think that her issues with the women would lead somebody to make her the bachelorette. I don't know. That's just my opinion. If it ends up being Maria, great. I mean, put it this way, Maria and Daisy couldn't be any more opposite in terms
Yeah.
of, I think, how they would run a season. I think Maria
Yeah.
would be out there, would be vocal. We know how she is. She's a little loud. Whereas Daisy is just this, demure, kind of quiet,
Hmm.
hard to open up. She talked about it on her hometown day, like she wants to get there and she doesn't want to, ruffle any feathers. I think she's definitely going to be someone that might end up being more heartbroken on her season, maybe
Hmm.
more crying from Daisy. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I just think storyline wise, and that's what they like to do, is give us a bachelorette who's got a storyline from the previous season. And I just think her storyline is stronger than Daisy's, other than Maria's.
Agree. I agree. And I have the same thought process. Like, it doesn't really matter who the bachelorette is. I think I have the similar thought where I was like, Daisy makes the most sense, just given that whatever's going to happen in the finale obviously is supposed to be very dramatic and, as always, but it's obviously to me, it makes more sense that it's her just because unless they're just looking to do a season where, you've got the loud bachelorette that can get into all these scuffles and all these things. So,
And let's not forget this, there is a possibility. And I always go back to the first episode of the season where Daisy was at the cocktail party and then they did an ITM of her. And she said it was
mm,
very difficult for her. She was talking to two women at a cocktail party. And she said it was very hard for her to follow along with what the two women were saying. So
yeah,
maybe there is a possibility where Daisy just thinks this is me being with 25, 30 guys. This might be too overwhelming for her, because
sure.
we know there's going to be a group date of 12 meatheads probably running around on a football field half naked. And she's not going to be able to hear or understand what
Hmm.
any of them are saying or doing. And maybe that. But then again, you think about it that if they're going to make her the bachelorette, you would think production would cater to her needs and not put her in situations where she's going to be so overwhelmed. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I think even with her being deaf and hard of hearing, I just think that it's too good of an opportunity to pass up. I think she would
sure.
be one of the most polarizing and influential leads we've ever had in the history of the show. The
Sure. Yeah.
representation she can give for a certain audience and kids to look up to her, that story is too much for them to pass up. So to
Yeah.
me, this all becomes, if Daisy isn't the bachelorette, I think it's because she just felt like, I can't do this. It's
Yeah.
too much. I can't handle, criticism, whatever. She might not
Yeah.
have thick enough skin because you're going to get criticized. Already she's getting criticized this season
Yeah.
because God knows what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that this seems to be all set up for Daisy.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And you would hope that production does not just repeat what happened on the one-on-one date with the helicopter music festival,
Yeah.
and just be
Yeah,
able
let's not
to
give her a
give.
helicopter date. Let's not give her a helicopter date followed by a concert. Let's not do that.
Yeah, so I think if they can cater to that and that's something she can feel comfortable with, then yeah, it makes all signs point to it being her. But I guess, yeah, you're right. It kind of just depends on, does that something that she's willing to step into, because that could be a lot on top of everything else you already know you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hopefully know soon enough, in the next few weeks or so. But is there anything else you'd like to share or let us know before we hop off and end?
Gosh, well, I mean, finale looks to be March 25th.
Hmm.
The Bachelorette season will start filming shortly thereafter. I've heard it's an all international season, that they're not going to be in the
Oh,
States at all. Heard that like a month ago. I haven't heard anything different.
okay.
So I think we should be finding out, obviously, within the next couple of weeks who the
Yeah.
Bachelorette is. And we'll just obviously let it play out. But this is going to be, we say it's going to be between Daisy and Maria. Whoever they choose, it's not like they're going to address who they didn't choose. They're just going to
Yeah.
say, here's our Bachelorette. They're not going to
Yeah.
say, if they choose Maria, they're not going to be like, well, Daisy didn't want it. They would never say that, even if that was the
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
because then Maria's going to feel like, well, great, I was second choice. And they're not even going to say it was between Maria and Daisy. Like, look, every season they choose someone, and all they do is put the support behind their choice. They
Yeah.
don't talk about who they didn't choose. So we're never
Yeah.
going to know any real reason why the other one wasn't chosen. Because look, if Daisy gets chosen, there's a ton of Maria fans out there that are going to be, why did they choose Daisy? I don't get it. Just because she
Yeah.
has, it's already started. Just because she has a cochlear implant, that's what. No, it's not just that. It's because America has taken to her story. If nobody
Yeah.
cared what Daisy said and nobody was following her and she wasn't getting a lot of positive response on the internet,
Yeah.
she wouldn't be up for it. But she
Yeah.
is, and people just have to accept that. And I understand Maria is too, but you can
Yeah.
only have one of them. You're not going to do a double Bachelorette. That was a disaster season. So
Yeah, let's not
you're
do
going to
that again.
choose one, and one fan base is definitely going to be upset between
Yeah.
those two. But you just got to get over it. It's not that big
Yeah.
of a deal, you know.
Yeah. I mean, people loved Abigail, and that, that was a really sweet story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
But
mean,
Abigail never, yeah, Abigail like finished fifth. She never got a one-on-one date. It never really for whatever reason, her story didn't take off like Daisy's did. Maybe it's
yeah,
because Daisy got the first one-on-one of the season, and it was
maybe, yeah.
so endearing to watch, and her to tell somebody and just to be so vulnerable like that. Abigail never
Yeah.
got a one-on-one. She got the first
Yeah.
impression rose, I think, and then never got a one-on-one, which was weird,
Yeah.
which showed that Matt was really never into her.
Yeah.
It was Matt's season, right?
Yes, yes, she was Matt's season. I know sometimes I get them confused. Yeah. I also think that with Daisy, like, she just seems very genuine. Like, it's so, I remember one of the first things she said to him is like, even if it's not me, like, I just want you to enjoy this process. Like, she said something really sweet and completely unexpected.
And,
A
and
contestant.
there's a part of me that thinks she might be too nice for this show.
Yeah, I worry
Does she
about
have
that.
any sort of mean streak where she could get upset at a guy for how she's being treated or whatever?
Yeah,
I hope she would stand up for herself,
yeah,
but she just seems
yeah.
like just a doll, and it just like,
Does.
and if you lined her, and if you lined her, if she becomes the Bachelorette and you lined up the previous 22 Bachelorettes before her, it just fits. And again, not saying Maria doesn't fit. I'm just saying it'd be like you'd look at the litany of women, you'd be like, yeah, totally see her fitting in with this crowd.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
fits.
It's just a strong pull. Like, I remember from the minute she like was on the screen and they have the date and just the things she says, you're just like, oh, bless her heart. Please protect her at all costs.
One thing that's upsetting me is people talking about she's got a vocal fry, and I'm like, look, the woman doesn't even hear herself. She can't comprehend, or she can't hear her own voice. And you're sitting there criticizing the way she sounds. Like, that is there's something wrong with you as a person. When, look, I can understand you wanting Maria to be the Bachelorette over Daisy, but when the reasons you're giving are she's got a vocal fry, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, you have to understand, this woman is deaf and hard of hearing. Like, of course, she's not going to sound like you or us
Yeah.
who have full hearing. And
Yeah.
that bothers me. That,
Yeah.
like I said, I have no problem with people wanting Maria over Daisy, but not for the
Yeah.
reasons that they're listing. That's
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah, the online world of criticism, especially what that comes with shows like this, is just, it's hard to read sometimes, and it's disappointing
Yeah.
because there's no compassion or empathy, and it's almost as if people are just being treated as if we're watching a drama series and not a reality series, and there's major disconnect which comes up sometimes, and then you're just like,
It's
oh
it's
my.
the parasocial relationships that the fans have with the contestants. They think that they know everything about them because of the 10 episodes or the 9 episode or
Yeah.
8 episodes that have aired of Joey's season of an edited television show, that they know everything about Daisy and they can just share. I mean, look, it was a great social media is one of the greatest inventions ever, but it's also one of the worst because it gives people
Yeah.
access to say whatever they want to anybody. And
Yeah.
basically, outside of a death threat, no real repercussions. Just you can say whatever you want and you have access to anybody, athletes, celebrities. They might not see it, but you can get to them. And it
Yeah.
wasn't that way back when I was growing up and even in the early 2000s. Just
Yeah.
things have changed and it just made people so much more bold behind their keyboards to say things that
Yeah.
they would never say, ever say. You think anybody
Mm-mm.
would ever go up to Daisy at a restaurant if she sees her
No.
and say, I hate your vocal fry? Do you think
Yeah.
anyone would say that? No, but they can say it behind a
Absolutely.
computer because nothing's going to happen to them. And that's just,
They're protected behind their laptop and
yeah.
computer screens, and they have the ability to say whatever. And that is a big reality of this world, is that happens. And yes, that going into it, but it doesn't mean that it makes it any easier to have to deal with that. So
And another reason why, this could be a reason why Daisy doesn't, maybe Daisy
yeah.
is seeing this stuff and she's just like, now if I get my own season, people are gonna, talk about my vocal fry and I don't know if I
Yeah.
want to deal with this. It's very
Sure.
possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll know in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, no, soon enough. But thank you so much for talking today. It was really exciting to talk to you. And I look forward to sharing our conversation with everyone else. But thank you for taking the time out. And I wish you the best of luck as you're switching over to Bleav and kind of helping us bridge the gap between sports fans and reality
Yeah.
fans.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.